Good evening. Please turn on your microphones if you're going to speak to...
Sorry.
No, it's okay. I'll start with council members. Don Vanny.
Here.
Marilyn Ertley.
Here.
Jen Schweddy.
Here.
Michelle Blythe.
Here.
Yvonne Gallardo Van Ornum.
Here.
Heather Logan and Deborah Nelson have excused absences. Moving to the Planning Commission, Bruce Angel.
Here.
Tim Dean.
Here.
Mike Thomas. And Melissa Johnson has an excused absence.
Thank you, Wendy. So we only have one thing on the agenda, and I will say, I hope we have a robust discussion about this, but we do have an hour because the city council has a workshop for 7 o'clock this evening. So just put that out up front. And Amy, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thank you, Madam Mayor. So this evening, we'll be going over some of the code amendments that were part of the 2022 docket. So it's kind of a long list, and so I thought my presentation I would do tonight would not be anything that I gave you. I'm going to try to keep it to about 15 minutes, so there is plenty of time for discussion afterwards. So first, I wanted to give a background of why we're doing the code amendments and why we're doing them right now. So in 2020, the City Council approved changes to AMC 2036, and that changed all of our zoning designations. So, for example, things went from residential high density to residential high capacity. So everything changed. The verbiage changed. We added residential medium density and residential moderate density. We added commercial corridor. So all of those things were adopted through the ordinance. Everything went great, but what happens, we did not have time at that particular point in 2020 and 2021 to make changes throughout the rest of the code. So that's what the majority of these amendments are, changing the zoning designations throughout all of the chapters. Our department has been called Community and Economic Development for quite some time, and everything in the code was referenced community development, so that was changed also. It was just a time to clean up. And then there were also anything that we changed from one code. If you change one chapter, any reference to that chapter then gets changed. So those are majority of the changes. And then I'm going to go through, so that's what started it. And then there's also some state changes. So there was a change to how final plats are processed in 2017, so I'm bringing that forward to Planning Commission and Council to see if they want to go forward with those changes. And then there was a critical area ordinance update from Department of Ecology in 2018 that recommended changes to buffers. So currently we follow the 18 buffers because of our code says that we follow the most recent or current edition of Department of Ecology, but it's kind of confusing when people are looking at our table and charts and then they're not the same as what the 18s are. So that was a change from the state or state level. And then accessory dwelling units, we already had a section, but we added the recommendation that came out of House Bill 1660 that was this year. That did not get adopted by the state, but we took, there were 2 items that we did not put in our code that was part of that bill. The rest of them we put in. We needed to update our ADU section anyway, so we used the guidance that was already there. And then I talked about the current zoning designations, the community development director, the state. We changed everything from design standards, I believe in 18 or 19, I'm not sure when that actually got adopted. We changed them from guidelines to standards. So in our code, everything still said guidelines. So that was something, so that word has changed throughout. We just adopted the Old Town Residential Design Standards, so that changed the design chapter and then multiple other areas. We adopted the Complete Streets Policy in 2019. So we have it as reference document, but those criteria and regulations were not put into our code, so we took advantage of putting that in. And then we updated the parking regulations. That was part of a council discussion earlier this year. So those are the main reasons why we went forward with these code changes. And then I'm going to kind of run you down the highlights of what I believe are the most important and not just those word changes, like from design standards to, or from guidelines to standards, things that actually have a little bit more meat to them. So these are the ones that I wanted to point out to you. So in chapter 2016, that's the permits and final plats, that chapter got rearranged. So over time, we added different code sections, and they kind of got jumbled up. So what I did was I went through and took all the same sections. So no sections were removed. They were just reorganized for chronological order when someone comes in to submit all the way through completion of a project. And then I made a new section that had what happens after decision. So if someone wants to appeal it, if someone wants to amend it, so it kind of just goes through the order. There were a few new sections that were added, but nothing was of significance was removed. And then 2046 was the design standards. So that, with the adoption of the Old Town Residential, it removed the entire section that was the infill section, because those regulations were no longer in play, because now everyone in the Old Town Residential District follows the new regulations. So that entire section was removed, but there were some very good regulations within that I then took from the infill and put into standards for across the entire city. And then the parking, we can go to that section afterwards. I'm sure that will come up. Actually, this kind of goes out of order from what I was thinking. The permitted uses table was changed, and so we had the parking and the screening sections match what the permissible use table changes were. So we got rid of all of the numbering system. So in the old permissible use, you would have a number attached. So if you had like a single family home, it was a use 1.111. And then when you went to a parking table and the screening table, you had to know what your use number was instead of just the use of single family home. You had to find the number 1.111 and then follow it across and then figure out what you were next to by number as well. So it was very confusing. So those tables got changed. So nothing within, we did add the new parking regulations, and we did add some new parking that we didn't have already. We didn't have anything for distribution center because that was a newer use. We didn't have anything for marijuana processing. We had it for the retail, but not the processing. Those were just all newer uses that never got the parking updated. So our old table ended at like use 24, and we had up to use 34. So there were some things we needed to add, but nothing super significant. And then these are new sections. So those ones were pretty much rearranged with no new use or no new information in there. These chapters have new sections, so there was new definitions put in to make sure that all of the permitted uses had definitions. So prior to this, we did not. And then 2016, back to that again, that's the final plat as administrative process and decision. So right now, for a final long major plat, so anything over 9 lots, it comes to City Council for approval. It does not go to Planning Commission, but it comes to Council for a workshop and then a meeting for approval. And so the state in 2017 passed a legislation that it could be done administratively as long as the council approved it to be done administratively. So we're suggesting, obviously with this, that it gets processed administratively. So I don't know if there's any questions on that.
Or how many plots there are?
Correct. So right now the short plat or the minor plats are processed administratively. So anything 9 lots or under is approved by the Community and Economic Development Director, and then the major plats come to council. So it's up to council ultimately what they want to do with this, but the reasoning behind why we're bringing it forward is that by the time it gets to final plat, it's pretty much done, and there's nothing that can be changed with it. So at preliminary stage, anything 9 lots and over has to go to a hearing examiner. So the hearing examiner already approves the preliminary plat. Civil construction comes in, we review administratively at that point to make sure the civil matches the preliminary plat. Then when the final plat gets submitted, we send out, administratively, we send out to a third-party consultant to make sure all of the lots close. So each lot has 4 sides, so they do all the measurements of the numbers to make sure everything matches, and then we bring it to council. So
I think we've processed one of those through council for a year.
yeah, Gilman Walk was the only one.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure how many more in the future will come. It's unit lot subdivisions are
When we
under
start to
that.
develop Eastville, I imagine we're gonna see quite a.
That will be, yes, that will be under the master plan that council will approve, though, the ultimate master plan first. And then each one underneath it would be a plat. So what kind of my question is to you is if you do allow it to go administrative, we can also inform you when these are happening. Like, so you're not blindsided by someone in the community saying, oh, you just approved this, or the city just approved this 200 lot subdivision, you have no idea about it.
Yeah, I
So-
think if you inform the city council to be able to help them to communicate better with constituents, it has to be early in the process.
Correct,
not
we
at
can
the
do
very
it,
end.
right, we can do it at the hearing examiner stage. Hey, let's let you know that this is in for review, it's going to the hearing examiner. So that's kind of our proposal. And then it also helps at the end, always at the end, the developer's ready, they're trying to get their as-built in, their bill of sales, they're closing, they're trying to sell, they're trying to get their building permits, and so sometimes with coming to council, it delays their approval as well, because we have to get on the calendar and come here. So it's just something for consideration. Like I said, ultimately up to,
All the decision-making is made in that preliminary plat process, so that's heard by the hearing examiner. Council knows what's going on at that point in time. Final plat is just to close out of the project, make sure all of the Ts have been crossed and the Is have been dotted, so.
and we would still take it, it would still need to be signed by finance as well to make sure all their taxes have been paid and all that as well.
And that's the part that you're asking to be done administratively, the
Correct.
final, where everything's already been done? Okay.
So that's the big one in that section. And then I updated the signature endorsement certificate, so that's what gets put on final plats. Ours were pretty messy, so those just got updated. Excuse me. And then 2036, that was just a section that was moved, so it looks like it was added. I moved it from a different chapter where it didn't make sense into here. And then 2040, the permitted uses, we got rid of the numbering system, like I already said, and then we broke them up into tables. So there's 5 new tables, and one's the residential zones, then there's commercial and mixed-use zones, industrial zones, special zones, and then public, semi-public zones. And so instead of all of the permitted uses and all the zones on one table, we've broken them up individually into those 5 tables. And then in your packet, under that section, under the red line section, I left the permissible use table. I didn't mark it all out. I put in there what we updated so you could see what changed, and then took those changes and put it into those 5 new tables. I don't know if I explained that. That was a lot of table talk. I wanted to make sure you knew what we were changing in the permitted use table as it was currently. So then you could see that, because when I took it to the new table, everything was new. So I just wanted, you can see what happened there. And then the supplemental uses, we added the accessory dwelling units, adult family homes, and some additional language to outdoor storage in the industrial areas. And then in the density and dimensions regulations, that's chapter 2048, we added new diagrams and lot layout examples. And those mimic are very similar to what was done in the Old Town Residential Design Standards. And then in chapter 2056, we added the complete streets policy regulations, a private road sidewalk regulations, and then private road access tracks. So the reason with the private roads is what we're coming up against is we allow unit lot subdivisions now. And they're starting to get taken advantage of, but the whole point behind the unit lot subdivision is to create smaller roads. Well, we didn't have a mechanism to let people do that. Everything was a 50-foot public right-of-way. So the private roads are the 20-foot driveway vehicle access with a 5-foot sidewalk. So we had to add both the sidewalk regulations and then the private road access tract. And then there's a slew of regulations that go along with that they have to meet. I think there's about 7 items that they have to meet to be able to do the 20-foot private road. And then in the signs, we added commercial corridor. It's kind of a little tricky in that we didn't want to redo our entire sign code at the moment. So we added, there's 2 sections where the commercial corridor was put in, and that is on 204th, where it was general commercial. So we added some items to the general commercial, and then commercial corridors also out on Smoky Point Boulevard, where it was highway commercial. So we added each one, there's two different, basically, commercial corridors for signs. And then in 2090, that's the impact fees, we added the Cascade Industrial Center traffic fees. So they are in the EIS planned action, that's the environmental impact statement that was done. So we have been collecting them and they're in our fee schedule and everything, but they just weren't in code. So we added that section in code. And then 2093 adds the wetland buffers from the Department of Ecology. We didn't have an annexation process. We had one paragraph that said see county regulations, so that's a whole new section. But since we just went through the Lindsay annexation, Mark had a very good write-up of the process, so we took that and put it in that section. And then the mixed use, I'm sure there's going to be a couple questions on this one. So 6 maps were replaced to reflect recent rezones. So those include Amazon and then a commercial, a Cascade Commercial Center. We rezoned those from the mixed use from commercial to light industrial, so those 2 maps were changed. We did the commercial corridor in Smoky Point, and so that map was also changed with the Transact. Over on 204th with that commercial corridor. So in your packet, you do not have the most recent. I just got the most recent maps sent to me from GIS today, so I will send a new chapter 2110 to you tomorrow, if that works. And those will have the updated maps in them. I do have the placeholder in your packet that said the map is updated. It's just not in that chapter. And then we just had some cleanup after we permitted some projects against the mixed-use development code. So nothing has been updated with this code since we put it in place at the end of 2017. So after we permitted against it, there were a few tweaks that we needed to do. So there's a couple tables at the beginning that don't match what we have later in the code. So all those tables got updated for building and frontage types. So we just went to each place type and made sure that they were all allowed in that matrix, and they weren't. So we just cleaned that up. And then, let's see, I'll skip a couple and then come back. We added the same parking requirements that we did from chapter 72, got placed into the mixed use. So the parking is all the same for the multifamily residential. We did an on-site interim surface parking. So what that's going to allow is in the mixed use zones, they'll have to put the parking in, but we'll make certain parking in a space that parking could eventually get taken out if there's no longer a demand for that parking, where it could be turned into open space, a park, additional building. What that is for the site, I'm not sure, but we'll have to make sure that they have parking in an area that can be converted later. So that's what that is meant for. And then we updated the permitted use tables to require a special or conditional use permit. That's how we've been processing them. So our mixed use development regulations to have permitted and special use, but no conditional use. So we went back to how we've been processing from 2016. So in the 2016 chapter, it tells you how to process a special and conditional use permit. So any conditional use permit goes to the hearing examiner, and that's how we've been processing these mixed use developments, but it's not reflected that way in the code. So those all got updated to match the same permitting process. And then that in turn had us change the review decision and appeal authority. But I am going to touch on one thing, the third one down there, that I'm sure is going to be a concern. So this is a new map that you don't have yet that I got today. So in the green, this green area is a new transect, which is T5MS. So the transit-oriented development that we have planned for Smoky Point corridor with the rapid transit line coming in, all of our TOD grant funding, and to get the TOD designation, we have to allow 6 stories within the area. So this is the only area that we came up with that we felt was a reasonable option. So on this side, the east side is the airport, and there is a 200-foot tree buffer that is required to stay on this airport property. And then you also have This will back to Smart Cap, which is putting in right here. Then this area right here, this red area is already under permitted. It's in civil review right now for a 3-story apartments and then retail along the front. And then this whole corridor area will stay at the 3 to 4 stories that can be built out right now. And then this street down here, we just had it go to this street just for this picture right now. But we would obviously probably step this in where they wouldn't be able to have 6 stories right on the street. They'd have to do something smaller here and then go up into that. So we kept it away from the residential, the current single-family residential. So that's kind of, I don't know what else to say with that. So we had to find an
This is
area.
the area that we've identified has the least impact on any of the surrounding properties, simply because that tree buffer is required to remain in place, so.
It will. My question on this is,
Excuse me, Madam Mayor, your microphone.
one, it's a, got my microphone on now, Wendy. It's a very short area, so the transitions, you know, when you're blending, you're trying to blend that density to lower density. I think the transitions are abrupt. But of a bigger concern to me is that we're planning the Smoky Point Boulevard as a 2-lane road with drop lanes, you know, a really low-density kind of streetscape that we were really excited about. And this seems like a really high-intensity use to put against a road that we planned and fought to only have 2 lanes of traffic.
Well, it isn't on the I mean, it's not on the corridor. You still have the mixed use out on the front facing along the street itself. This is set back.
But
And there's an
all that
alleyway
mixed
that
use,
divides that property from the Smoky Point corridor. You
But-
don't see that?
but they're all going to come out to Smoky Point. And so we're really loading up that west side of the boulevard for that access out. I'm just telling you what I see, Mark.
Yeah.
I feel very
Yeah.
uncomfortable with this, that we're kind of walking into a traffic snarl. I'm going to be honest with you, when it comes to the transit-oriented development grants, that's not at the top of my priorities. That's sort of the tail wagging the dog to me, to say, we're going to zone it this way so we can get some grants.
Well, it's more for the designation as well, I thought, but.
And they're just, the number of years that we're really away from a robust, rapid transit bus line, you
Well, it's not
know.
like this is gonna be built overnight either. So this is just something we're setting in motion.
That's what we
But
said about
you
the
have to
CIC.
remember that both of our streets that connect to Smoky or to Airport Boulevard are on this side. So you've got roundabouts that bring traffic over to Airport Boulevard, so it doesn't dump all the traffic onto Smoky Point Boulevard. You have alternate routes of.
People are going to get in their
egress.
cars and take what they perceive as the shortest
Shortest.
distance to get onto the freeway. And that won't be going out Airport Boulevard and coming down 172nd. It'll be dumping out onto Smoky Point Boulevard and going to that horrible intersection corridor.
One thing I will
Yeah.
point out is this, because the roundabouts along here take up so much of the available developable area, your yield, the end of this really isn't going to be that significant because you're taking away from buildable areas on the boulevard itself.
And so since that transition, I think, is really small and abrupt, I would be more comfortable seeing that these up to 6 stories was a stepped back design, you know, so stories 4 through 6 would be stepped back from the first 3 stories.
They are.
They already are.
So the red,
So we're not going to have a 6-story straight-up building?
you know, because the road,
Oh, you're talking about the floors themselves?
Yes.
oh, within the same building. Oh, okay.
Can you point to where
Sure.
that 6-story, you're looking at?
This area right here, this green area. And it's up to 6. It doesn't have to be that people will build to 6. If they can't fit it, then they can't fit it. If they can't meet the rest of the regulations, then they can't build it. It's the same as with every site. If you can't put it on, I mean, there's plenty of people that want to build higher than the 2 or 3 stories that they can, but they can't fit all the other requirements on there, like with storm, they can't meet their storm, they can't meet their parking, they can't meet their landscaping, they can't meet their open space. So then that reduces what they can actually put in.
So then, if someone can meet the 6, they'll build the 6.
Right, but right now they probably
But
couldn't.
if nobody
because-
else can,
Right, so without the
then you
TOD
only
in
have one,
place.
then you only have one building or whatever, that's
Correct.
6 stories, and the rest aren't 6 stories because people can't do it?
They probably can't do the 6 stories, in my opinion, right now, because they wouldn't be able to meet the parking requirements without the TOD. So the TOD designation gets rid of the parking requirements, is what I
They can't
was
meet
under.
it, but we want to zone it for it anyways?
For future, yes. So right now, if someone came in to build 6 stories, I think they would have a very hard time, because they would not be able to meet the parking unless they put it in the first
Well, it'd have to be
stories,
underground.
yeah, underground, without meeting, because the TOD is supposed to reduce the traffic because people are using the rapid. That's kind of the point around it.
Right. My point is like, I think I agree with that, and I agree if we have robust public transportation systems that do rapid transit, that is great. But when you look at the Gold Swift line, it's really to get people out of Arlington and to their jobs in Everett and Seattle. You know, it's not a circulation, I think, that's going to help that corridor much. That's just my opinion on it.
And can I go further, a little further with that without getting into too wonky? Typically, a 2.5 Main Street is a mixed-use designation. Is it possible that you're thinking about that area more as as a T5 open, so that there can be residential on the first floor?
Yeah, I was supposed to go with the T4 MS in the front, so that would be more of a horizontal mixed use here. So you'd have your commercial and your 1 or 2 stories up here, and then you would follow it up with just straight up.
So you're
Back here.
thinking about commercial back off of the main boulevard?
No.
So,
That's all the residential use.
okay,
But I
so,
will tell you, though, that currently we allow up to 5 stories. So you're looking at an
Correct.
additional floor for just this small section of the boulevard.
do you think there's enough, because what we talked about in the long conversations about this was that particularly going to the east toward the airport, there was a limited amount of room for transition from higher intensity to slightly lower intensity. But I'm just questioning if you're going to allow 6-story buildings there with no requirement for setting back the top stories. How are you planning on doing that transition smoothly so we don't get the citizen complaint that I got all these people looking down on me?
Yeah, well, kind of to follow up with what Mark said, in this red area right here, along the entire corridor, you can do 5 stories right now. Up to. So there really isn't much of a step back.
I mean, we could definitely look at a requirement for modulation in the buildings. That's not an issue. It's just a matter of trying to meet the criteria that we're doing for this corridor, so.
When I just really think it makes us, we need to look at the road design of this corridor. You know, if all of those can already be 5 stories, you know, in transit-oriented development, if we get that moniker, it requires less parking. You know, so,
Well, that's why we changed the parking regulations, so that you have a period of time where eliminating parking is, you know, not possible to do, because people are still auto-dependent. But we identify those areas of the surface parking that will be eliminated once you have public transportation in place that people will be utilizing. So then there's less demand on surface parking in vehicles.
except they're still gonna own the vehicles and wanna park them there anyway. That's what we're finding, is that, you know, I mean,
Everybody
we're learning those
Well,
lessons
and
through our
it's
other
creative
mixed
to do
use
that. I mean,
developments.
but if the opportunity arises where you can eliminate surface parking,
Who decides that? When,
that's up to the owners of the properties.
I mean, I think most everybody has one car, if not 2 or even
I
3.
totally agree. That's
Yeah.
why we've upped the regulations for
Yeah.
more parking.
Okay.
But we also want to identify this for in the future.
Mm.
If the opportunity arises and you see less need for surface parking for vehicles, that can be turned into something else, like open space or green space or some type of other amenity in that development.
How many people would that accommodate? How many? you know, if they filled it up with a 6-story building?
Well, I'd have to go through and take away all the right-of-way oh, thank you. I'd have to go through and take away all the right-of-way takes from the
Yeah.
property, and then take that acreage and just figure out what that would be for yield.
I was just curious how many cars would be on the road that, you know.
Yeah. Yes.
Just clarification on the map and everything, because I'm not seeing exactly where everything is. But you mentioned that that wooded area to the east of the green part was Smart Cap, and I thought that was
That's
the
Center of Excellence. It is.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's
You're
not,
right.
okay. That
Yes,
helped
you're
me,
right.
that just
I'm
blew
sorry,
my
you're
mind,
right.
because
Yep,
I
Smart
was
Cap's down here.
someplace else.
Wrong
Okay.
wooded area. Here's
Nope,
Smart Cap.
Nope.
Yeah,
Nope.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's the lower one.
I apologize for that, Jen. In the fire station.
So approximately right now, Mark, how many residents are in that green area? Existing residents?
How many residents are
20.
there?
That's what,
Not very many.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because
it's,
these are like-
They're large parcels.
Because these are
That's
the parcels
yeah.
that go this way. So there's like one house for that entire parcel.
There's probably 15
Yes.
residents there with the
Exactly.
mobile homes and all of that, so.
Okay.
How does this density work with our airport overlay?
Fine.
Yeah, it's fine. I
It's
mean,
within the densities?
your height,
Yeah, they're not,
Is it
I know
the,
the height is okay, I'm talking about the people density
The-
per acre.
the density is only on the ITZ zones and like on the actual airport itself, not within the,
Not in the
not in
rings?
C and D,
Okay.
and all of those. Anyway, we'll go back. So that was a fun topic.
More work to be done on that one, I'm just noting.
And then the last section was the development design standards, with taking out the Old Town residential design standards and changing some of that language around. I just added some of the infill, some of the language that was in 2046 and 48 into the actual development design standards itself to give us more teeth when actually needing fencing and parking lot landscaping and things like that. It's in verbiage, and then it's in 2046, some in 48, and then also in the development design standards. So we have it in multiple areas, so it can't get missed right now until we rewrite the full code. And then I'm opening up for any questions that I didn't touch on or documents. And then I hopefully you understood my my description in the cab of the code summary. So I tried to do a code summary for you, which is this that you got along with each chapter, so you wouldn't have to, so you could kind of see what the changes were, and then if you're just seeing it's a word for a word, then you don't have to go pay attention and flip through the PDF. So I'm hoping that helped you, and I'm hoping that you use that as a guide over the next couple months to be able to actually look through it. So that's the other thing I wanted to say. This code amendment is going to Department of Commerce on Wednesday for their 60-day review. Changes can get made. It's just I have to send the initial for a 60-day review. It will be going to Planning Commission meetings in September. So the first one will be a meeting or a workshop, and then a public hearing, and then the plan is to bring the amendments to council the 10th and 17th of October. So we have a few months is what I'm getting at to hear suggested changes, to have us get it changed before the public hearing. So whatever we take to the public hearing is what I would like potentially for what you're supporting for adoption. So if you want to meet with me or Mark individually at any time to get clarification or a phone call, just let me know, or I can bring it, I don't know, however you want to do it. I want to
How
make
does
sure that we're
council
working
wanna-
this out.
Yeah, how does council want to review this? Do you want it to come back to you in a workshop?
I think that's most
Yeah.
helpful. I want to hear what other people's comments are
Yeah.
about it, so I would rather do it in a workshop format.
So
So-
we'll get.
Okay, so we're getting
schedule
pretty tight though.
Well, we'll make the time. We can always book an hour early if we
Oh,
have to.
okay.
I mean, this is really important to the future development.
Yeah.
of the Smoky Point area. So I think it merits us finding the time to have those
So is it just that
conversations.
one area that people are really concerned about, or is it the rest of the code amendments? Just so I can,
Mostly that area.
I think you need to give the council at least, I don't know, maybe the planning commission has been through this
Yeah.
more. I would
Okay.
like the council to have more time to absorb the huge amount of information you sent to us this week
Okay.
online.
Yeah.
So
perfect. And then I will get the chapter 2110, which is the mixed use, I'll get that updated tomorrow, and to Wendy, and have her send it out. Does that work, Wendy? Sure. Okay.
And that was kind of, part of the strategy was to get this to council before your break, so you did have time
Oh, good.
Yep.
to go through it, because it is a huge undertaking just to review the changes.
So can I just ask on the 6-story?
Mm-hmm.
We don't have any 6 stories now, right?
No.
We have 5, but not,
So to put it in context,
I don't have any
the
five
new
stories out
apartments
there
being
either.
built on 204th,
on where?
on 204th,
Oh, yeah.
that mixed use, those are 5-story buildings.
That is that Pilchuck? Yeah, okay. So that's
We don't
5
have any
stories.
five-story in Smoky Point right now.
I don't think so, but.
No.
So if
But
we
I'm
don't
aware.
do 6-story, that's gonna affect the transit?
It does.
So they won't give you grants or funding unless you have 6 stories?
Correct, that's one of the criteria.
That's rather annoying. Yeah. Well, I don't like 5 stories. I don't like 6 stories, so I'll just, to me, it's not Arlington, but, yeah, that's just.
I had just one quick question on
Sure.
when we were talking about the private streets
Oh, yep.
with the sidewalks and stuff. What protection or what do we have as a city that, let's just say this development goes in there, they put in these private streets with sidewalks, 20, 25 years down the road, all of a sudden they want the city to take over. Is that ever a factor?
That happens, I mean, we have that occurring out in Smoky Point where they're private streets and they want the city to take them over. We always have the right to deny that
Yeah.
request.
Well, that's what I was just curious, if they were to ever come back to us to do something like that, in the beginning, is there standards that we could hold them to build those streets to?
Well, the issue we run into is this, is that by our standards, our minimum width for right-of-way is 50 feet.
50 feet.
So it kills any projects where you're trying to get some density into them and control that by doing the reduction of the street. 20 feet is the minimum allowed by fire code for any type of access.
I think the benefit to private is they don't have to build to our standards.
Yeah.
And it does, like Mark said, it does come up from time to time, and we don't take over private roads for that reason, is because they weren't constructed to our
Okay.
standards.
Now, to get to your point about that, we are looking at, with East Hill development up there, having a full 60-foot of right-of-way, but reducing the street section down and using that excess right-of-way for storm drainage, so we can have more linear storm drainage, swales, things like that in that area. So you do have the potential, if it arose in the future, to be able to expand your roadway because you have the right-of-way in place. But it's hard to do it when you're dealing with the unit lot subdivision because the build-to lines are established for that building. So you don't have the ability to expand the roadway at some point in the future.
Yeah, my curiosity is just, like I say, 20, 25 years down the road, people that originally bought into development, not aware that it's a private street and stuff, and they come in there, and then all of a sudden the roads are falling apart and deteriorating, and now everybody's, well, you gotta pay to maintain it.
Well, sure, because they quit paying their homeowners' dues, so that it's not being
Yeah.
put away in an account where the maintenance can be taken care of, like it should be, so.
And Dawn, we did add that the covenant includes the condition of the private road, where'd I go? That the covenant that provides the maintenance and repair of the private road by property owners has been approved by the city and recorded with the Snohomish County. So at least we are putting that portion in place, but yes, you're right. It would ultimately be up to the city council then to vote for that, for them to give it to the city at that time. And then it would be up to the council's choice at that time whether they want to accept unimproved
Yeah.
roads or if they want to accept them.
Okay, thank you.
What did you say was the tallest, is it 3-story at Smoky Point right now?
The villas is probably the
You've
tallest.
got 5 floors on the towers
And then like,
over
well, the hotel,
commercial, yeah.
down, I don't know how tall the hotel is. But I have to, that's pretty tall.
The
It's probably
Wyndham
about 5.
Gardens.
It's
I think
50
those are
feet.
5-story.
It's a 50-foot maximum
What's the
right now
villas?
for most of it.
The Wyndham Gardens Hotel?
Ah,
That's probably the tallest thing in Smoky Point.
Forget about that.
Besides Amazon.
I mean, I think the towers have a couple of towers, but I don't think they have, there's no residential up in them, and some of that
Yeah,
upper
it's all
commercial is
commercial.
not usable, yeah. Amy, one thing I would like to see, if you wouldn't mind, is I'd like to see a little bit better written out, I would like to understand the changes that you're making to the ADUs. If you have any detail on that.
Yeah.
You don't have to do it today, but I'd like to see that.
No, I can do it right now, if you'd like.
Don, I will tell you one thing about private roads is that the issue you have with private roads isn't the width, that isn't the problem. It's the way that the base is built, the depth of the asphalt. If they were to be required to build to a full asphalt section, it would last
Yeah.
50, 60 years easily, so.
I can bring it up on the screen if you want, or I can go over it, which.
Yeah, just, if you can just go over it.
Sure.
yeah.
And so, we added, an ADU may either be attached or detached, because that was not clear, to the primary residence. So that means it can be in a detached garage above it, or by itself outside, detached from the primary house. And then we have, 1 detached ADU per single-family residence is allowed, and we actually added a section for if it's a duplex, and they can actually have one in the back of each duplex, because a duplex is considered a single family for every other purpose of our code. So 2 would be allowed on a duplex lot behind. We removed the 25%. So currently our code has an ADU may not be comprised more than 25% of the gross floor area of the primary structure, and no more than a total of 800 square feet, whichever is lesser, and then it has to be over 300 square feet by building code. So we removed that section and added 1 attached ADU and 1 detached ADU may be located on a lot of 4,500 square feet or more in a zone that allows a single-family home. And then we added an ADU shall not be more than 850 square feet on a lot with 4,500 square feet or less in property. So we just did one, it doesn't go to there's no percentage.
So what if it's a 7,200 lot? Would it still be?
If it's a 7,200 lot, then it says the ADU shall not be more than 1,350 square feet combined between attached and detached accessory dwelling units on a lot with 4,500 square feet or more. So you can only have, you can have 1,350 of attached and/or detached accessory dwelling unit on a lot bigger than 4,500 square feet.
Okay, I think that's an improvement in our code, personally.
Right, so the problem or why we wanted to change it as well is we were getting houses that were 1,000 square feet, and they could only do 25%, but then they had to meet the 300 minimum, so they couldn't do it. So it's not, to us, it wasn't right to punish someone for having a small house on a property that they couldn't really do anything about, but still wanted an ADU.
Right.
So, and then, that's pretty much it. We added just a couple little things with the design standards just to reinforce it. We had the architectural character must match the home, but then we said comply with the design standards, so we added that verbiage. And then the required off-street parking is exempt if an ADU is located within a quarter mile of a major transit center, which there's only one. So we kept that from the state requirement. And then the rest of it is they require one parking space for each ADU.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Does anybody have any other pressing questions or information you want to see come forward in September? Or I really appreciate you taking the time to go through. You've been working on it for months. Look how big your binder is. And so we know we got the Reader's Digest version here.
So all of this is online. I just thought it was easier than going back and forth. So the PDFs that you get are this book. I just was trying to
Yeah,
help you out a little bit more than going through page by page.
that's perfect. Would you also take a minute and introduce Amarissa to the council? Because I don't think they've met her before.
Yes, this is Americia Lawless, and she is a permit tech, and she's working to become a planner in our department. So she's also been going to planning commission and taking meeting minutes and learning about planning.
Congratulations. Thanks for being here. All right, anybody have any other questions, comments? No? All right. Well,
I have one
entertain
last
a
thing.
motion
Enjoy
to
your
adjourn the
August
meeting.
weekend.
Yeah.
Madam Mayor, I move to adjourn.
Second.
Question?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.